You can wait for them to change, but the seasons will change first. The river will change its course before they do, and by the time you realize it, years of your life will have already washed away. The first step to personal liberation is the acceptance of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Most of our emotional suffering does not come from what is, but from the gap between what is and what we expect. We often expect people to wake up one morning transformed, kinder, more disciplined, more understanding. We project our own potential for growth onto them, assuming that if we can see the way forward, so can they. But this assumption is a heavy chain. It ties our peace of mind to their choices, which are beyond our control. Accepting the reality of human nature, that change is rare and often resisted, is the first cut that frees us from that chain. When we look at the world with clear eyes, we see that change is not a default state for most people. Comfort is, familiarity is, and while these can feel safe, they are the very walls that keep growth out. Many individuals choose routine over evolution, even if that routine is destructive. They will repeat the same habits, the same mistakes, even the same excuses, not because they cannot see a better way, but because they are not ready to face the discomfort of transformation. This is not about intelligence, morality, or love. It is about the deep human resistance to stepping into the unknown. Once we accept this, we stop being shocked by it. There is a strange kind of peace in no longer expecting people to change. It does not mean we stop caring for them. It means we release the emotional contract we've signed without their consent, the unspoken deal that says, "I will wait for you to become who I need you to be." By tearing up that contract, we stop holding them hostage to our expectations, and more importantly, we stop holding ourselves hostage to their timeline. Acceptance removes the poison of resentment. Without the expectation, there is no disappointment. Without disappointment, there is clarity. And with clarity, we can finally see our own path again. Think of a river. A river flows where it wants, at the speed it wants, carving its own course through the earth. You can stand in the water and try to push it in another direction, but you will exhaust yourself and achieve nothing. The river will still run where it runs. People are the same. They have their own pace, their own season, their own path. Sometimes that path will run alongside yours. Other times it will split away, and no amount of pleading or effort will bring it back. The wise do not try to change the river. They decide whether to walk beside it or find a new stream. The irony is that when we stop forcing others to change, we sometimes create the very space in which they can change. Pressure often triggers resistance, but freedom allows reflection. Yet even if they do not change, our peace remains intact, because it is no longer tethered to their actions. This is the essence of acceptance, creating stability in yourself that is immune to the storms or the stagnation of others. Without this stability, you will forever be at the mercy of the emotional weather patterns of everyone around you. Acceptance also sharpens our vision. It strips away the illusion that love, friendship, or loyalty are enough to transform someone. It reminds us that transformation is an inside job, and that if they do not pick up the tools, the work will not begin. This is why so many people remain the same year after year, even when their circumstances beg for change. The acceptance of this truth can feel heavy at first, even cruel, but it is not cruelty, it is clarity. And clarity is always the foundation for strength, because once we accept that they will not change, the question shifts from how can I make them to how will I grow despite them, and that single shift changes everything. The greatest thief of time is not distraction, it is not procrastination, it is waiting, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for someone else to change so you can finally move forward. On the surface, waiting feels harmless, even wise. After all, patience is a virtue, right? But there's a difference between patience and paralysis. Patience is active. It's about preparing yourself, sharpening your tools, and staying alert for the opportunity. Waiting, in this passive sense, is different. It's the quiet surrender of your life to someone else's clock, and that is the trap. The trap works like this. You convince yourself that once they apologize, you'll be able to forgive. Once they understand you, you'll feel peace. Once they get their life together, you can finally start living yours. But life does not work in such neat cause and effect timelines. More often than not, the apology never comes. The understanding never arrives. The life you've been waiting for them to fix stays broken, and in the meantime, your own dreams, goals, and possibilities collect dust on a shelf. One day, you wake up and realize you've been living in the waiting room of your own existence. The danger is subtle because waiting disguises itself as loyalty. It whispers, "You're a good person for staying. You're patient. You're committed." And while loyalty is noble, it becomes a chain when it holds you in a place where growth has stopped. Imagine sitting on a train track, telling yourself you'll only move when the train starts moving too. But what if their train has no engine? What if it's not even pointed in the same direction as yours? You'll sit there forever, convinced that your stillness is virtue, when in reality it's the slow erosion of your potential. The trap of waiting doesn't just steal time, it shapes your identity. Over time, you start to define yourself not by who you are becoming, but by who you are waiting for. Your story becomes centered around them, their choices, their pace, their reluctance instead of your own journey. This is how people lose themselves. They shrink their own ambitions to fit inside the small spaces left by someone else's stagnation. And once you start living small, you start thinking small. Your energy dims, your confidence fades, and your world begins to mirror theirs, unmoving, unchanging, unfulfilled. Breaking free from this trap requires an uncomfortable honesty with yourself. You have to ask, if they never change, am I willing to stay exactly where I am? Most people avoid this question because it forces a confrontation with reality. It forces you to see that your progress has been put on hold for the sake of someone else's journey, a journey they may not even be taking. And once you see it clearly, you can no longer lie to yourself. You can no longer pretend that time is not slipping away while you wait. This is the moment where courage becomes necessary, because stepping away often feels like betrayal. But in truth, it's an act of self-respect. There's a truth you must hold on to. Life rewards movement. Every step you take toward your own growth opens doors you could not see while standing still. The relationships that are meant to stay in your life will keep pace with you. The ones that fall behind were never meant to shape your future. You are not abandoning them. You are refusing to abandon yourself. And when you break free from the trap of waiting, you stop measuring your life by someone else's readiness and start shaping it by your own. That shift is where freedom begins and where transformation becomes inevitable. There's a moment in life when you realize no one is coming to save you. It can be a sobering thought, even frightening at first. We grow up believing that someone, a mentor, a partner, a family member, will eventually step in, recognize our potential, and guide us to where we're meant to be. But if you look closely at the stories of those who have transformed their lives, you'll see a common truth. The turning point came when they stopped waiting for a rescuer and took responsibility for their own change. This is not cynicism, it is empowerment, because the moment you accept full responsibility for your growth, you stop outsourcing your future to the unpredictable choices of others. Taking responsibility for your own change means becoming the architect of your own evolution. This doesn't mean you have to do it all alone. Support is valuable. Guidance is powerful, but the foundation must be yours. If you don't lay the bricks, there will be no walls. If you don't lift the roof, there will be no shelter. Too often, people wait for the right environment or the right circumstances before they begin their transformation, but the truth is, the environment rarely changes first. It is your change that reshapes the environment. You create the conditions you need by becoming the person who can thrive in them. Responsibility also means letting go of the excuses that feel so comfortable to hold on to. It's easy to say, I could be better if they supported me, or I'd take more risks if the timing was right, or I'd be healthier if my family ate better. These statements might even be true to some degree, but they are also traps. The moment you make your progress dependent on someone else's behavior, you've given away your power. You've handed them the steering wheel of your life and agreed to sit in the passenger seat, hoping they'll take you somewhere worth going. But why gamble your future on someone else's driving? Owning yourself. Change also forces you to confront your habits, not just the obvious bad ones, but the subtle patterns that keep you small. Procrastination, self-doubt, the need for approval, these are not flaws you were born with. They are behaviors you've rehearsed over time. And the good news about learned behaviors is that they can be unlearned. But the unlearning will not happen if you keep blaming the people around you for why you remain the same. As long as the story is about them, the power to change remains outside of you. The story must shift to you, your choices, your reactions, your daily actions. That is where change becomes possible. This kind of responsibility is not a burden, it's liberation. When you understand that your happiness, growth, and direction are yours to shape, you no longer feel like a leaf tossed in the wind of other people's moods and decisions. You stop being a reactor and start being a creator. And something incredible happens when you step fully into this mindset. The fear of being alone in your journey fades. You start to realize that being the driver of your own life is far more secure than sitting in the back seat, hoping someone else will take the wheel. Ultimately, responsibility for self-change is the great divider between those who talk about transformation and those who actually experience it. You can read every book, watch every seminar, listen to every piece of advice, but if you do not claim ownership over your own progress, nothing changes. The world is full of people who know what they should do but never step forward to do it. Why? Because they are still waiting for someone else to make it easier. But life rarely makes it easier. You make yourself stronger. And when you embrace that truth, you no longer fear the hard road, you choose it. Because you understand that the hard road leads somewhere while waiting for others leads nowhere. Before change happens in your circumstances, it must happen in your energy. Most people try to flip this sequence. They wait for the job, the relationship, the perfect conditions, and then they expect to feel motivated, confident, and ready. But life doesn't work like that. Your outer reality is a mirror, and it reflects the energy you carry within. If your inner state is stagnant, fearful, or resigned, the opportunities around you will match that frequency. But if your inner state is alive, determined, and focused, doors begin to appear where walls once stood. Energy is more than just physical strength or enthusiasm. It's the sum of your thoughts, emotions, and actions in motion. It's the invisible language you speak before you ever open your mouth. Have you ever met someone who walked into a room and, without saying a word, shifted the entire atmosphere? That's energy. Some people radiate possibility, others radiate limitation. And the truth is, we're all broadcasting something at all times. If you want your life to change, the first step is to adjust what you're broadcasting. This is why waiting for others to change before you shift your energy is such a costly mistake. If you let their pace, mood, or unwillingness set your frequency, you'll end up trapped in their cycle. It's like tuning your radio to their static and wondering why you can't hear music. Energy is contagious, but so is stagnation. By taking ownership of your own emotional and mental state, you break the cycle and begin to influence your surroundings instead of being shaped by them. Raising your energy doesn't require a massive life overhaul in one night. It starts with small but deliberate choices. It could be as simple as starting your day with 10 minutes of stillness, a brisk walk, or reading something that sharpens your mind. These actions may seem small, but they shift the tone of your day. They tell your mind, we are moving forward. And when your mind hears that often enough, it begins to believe it. Belief changes posture, posture changes presence, and presence changes how the world responds to you. Your energy also determines the type of people and opportunities you attract. If you carry the energy of doubt, you'll draw situations that confirm your doubt. If you carry the energy of readiness, you'll meet people who recognize it and want to align with it. This is why you can't afford to wait for the world around you to improve before you do. Your improved energy creates the better world. It's not magic, it's alignment. You start making choices from a place of strength instead of fear, and those choices stack into visible results. Think of it this way: the garden doesn't grow because you stare at the soil waiting for it to sprout. It grows because you prepare the soil, plant the seeds, and nurture it daily. Your energy is that soil. If it's dry and depleted, nothing will flourish, no matter how good the seeds are. But if it's rich, alive, and well-tended, growth is inevitable. The more you cultivate your inner energy, the more your outer life starts to match the vision you've been holding. And once you understand that, you stop waiting for change to appear, you start generating it from the inside out. Growth is not always about adding more, often it's about creating space. In a world that glorifies connection, we forget that separation can be just as powerful. Sometimes the soil you're planted in is too crowded for you to grow roots deep enough to sustain your potential. The sunlight you need is being blocked. The air you breathe is filled with the weight of other people's doubts, fears, and habits. And as long as you remain in that environment, your own development will be stunted. This is why growth often begins the moment you create distance, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. Distance is not rejection. It is an act of preservation. When a tree is transplanted, it's not because the gardener hates it, it's because the tree needs different conditions to thrive. Likewise, stepping away from certain people, places, or patterns doesn't mean you have stopped caring. It means you care enough about your future to protect it. This is a difficult truth to accept, because distance often feels like loss. And in a way it is. You are losing proximity, shared history, and perhaps even comfort, but you are gaining clarity, perspective, and room to expand into the person you are becoming. The challenge is that not everyone will understand your need for space. People may accuse you of changing as if that's an insult. They may try to guilt you into staying small because your growth makes them confront their own stagnation. But here's the truth: if your presence requires you to shrink in order to be accepted, you are in the wrong place. Distance is the boundary that says, I can love you and still outgrow you. Without that boundary, you risk becoming an echo of someone else's limitations instead of the author of your own evolution. Distance also gives you something priceless: the ability to see yourself clearly. When you're too close to certain people or environments, it's like standing inches from a painting. You can't see the whole picture. Stepping back allows you to notice patterns, habits, and dynamics you were blind to before. You begin to see where you've been dimming your own light, where you've been accepting less than you deserve, and where your energy has been drained instead of replenished. This awareness is the first step to changing it. Creating distance is not about running away from challenges. It's about putting yourself in a position where challenges build you instead of break you. It's the difference between climbing a mountain with a clear view versus climbing with a heavy blindfold. One forces you to rely on guesswork and fear. The other allows you to see every step, plan your path, and enjoy the climb. By stepping away from the noise of other people's opinions, negativity, or resistance, you give yourself the mental clarity to focus on the climb that actually matters your own. And here's the paradox. The distance you create for your growth often benefits the very people you step away from. When you evolve, you show what's possible. Your progress becomes a silent permission slip for others to do the same. But even if they never follow, your path remains your own. You are no longer waiting for them, no longer measuring your pace by theirs. You are free to move at the speed your growth demands, and sometimes that means moving far ahead. That is not abandonment, that is alignment. The loudest influence you will ever have is not your words, it's your life. People listen to what you say, but they believe what you consistently do. When you lead by example, you stop trying to convince others and start showing them. This is the purest form of leadership because it removes all arguments. You can debate an opinion, but you cannot debate a lived reality. The person who has walked the path and carries the results in their presence doesn't need to demand respect. Their life earns it. When you stop waiting for others to change and instead commit fully to your own transformation, something subtle happens. You shift from a position of pushing to one of pulling. You no longer need to drag anyone toward growth. Your progress becomes a quiet force that draws people forward. This is why some of the most inspiring individuals aren't the ones shouting the loudest about change. They're the ones living in such alignment that others can't help but notice. The power lies in embodiment, not persuasion. Leading by example also protects you from the trap of hypocrisy. When you demand from others what you have not yet cultivated in yourself, your influence weakens. But when your actions mirror your values, your integrity becomes unshakable. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Perfection is impossible and often intimidating. It means you are visibly practicing the change you speak about. Even when you stumble, your willingness to stand back up becomes part of the example you set. People don't just need models of success, they need models of resilience. And here's the truth, most people will not tell you they're watching. They won't always praise your growth. In fact, some may criticize it because it makes them uncomfortable. But even in their silence, even in their resistance, they are observing. They see the way you carry yourself differently, the way your decisions align with your principles, the way you no longer engage in the same unproductive cycles. You may never know the full extent of the lives you touch simply by living yours with intention, but that impact is real, and it ripples outward in ways you can't predict. Leading by example also means accepting that your journey is your message. Every small choice, every boundary, every act of discipline is a chapter in the story you're telling the world. You don't have to lecture anyone about the importance of self-respect if you live in a way that demonstrates it. You don't have to beg someone to take responsibility if they can see you doing it daily. People might ignore advice, but they rarely ignore results. And the more your results speak for themselves, the less you need to explain why you chose the path you did. Ultimately, leading by example is an act of quiet courage. It means you are willing to grow in full view of others, knowing they may not understand, agree, or follow. But that's not the point. The point is to live in alignment with who you are becoming, regardless of who comes with you. By doing so, you give others something priceless, a living demonstration that change is possible, even when the odds are against you, even when the people around you remain the same. And that is a far greater gift than any argument or plea for them to change could ever be. The truth is, they may never change. They may live their entire lives in the same patterns, speaking the same excuses, walking the same circles. But you are not bound to that. You have been given the gift of awareness, and with it, the responsibility to act. Don't waste your years in the waiting room of someone else's life. Step out, move forward, grow so boldly that their unchanged world can no longer contain you. And one day, when they look up and see how far you've gone, they'll know you didn't leave them behind to abandon them. You left to become who you were meant to be. They may never change, so you must.